Hi there, this is Michael from Airsoft.in.Canada, and I'm once again asking you to listen to me talk about the state of our efforts to thwart Bill C-21. Well, not exactly. Today we're going to talk about something a little different. I'm going to cover a talking point or a couple talking points that proponents of the bill are using. I'm going to talk about why they're using them, why they're wrong, our counter-arguments. And so it's going to be a little bit complex, but bear with me. It's worth listening, I think. The first instance we're going to talk about occurred in a committee meeting, the same committee that C-21 is going to go into soon. And what happened was Glenn Motz, who is a Conservative MP, asked Bill Blair who would be made safer by the prohibition of airsoft guns in Canada. Bill Blair's response was that Canadians would be made safer. And then to back up this assertion, he talked about a tragic incident that happened in Calgary recently. A woman was in a hotel. She was causing a disturbance, and the police were called. When the police arrived and confronted her, she produced some sort of a replica gun and pointed it at them. And the police, fearing for their safety, shot her, and she died. And so Bill Blair brought this up as an example of something that could be prevented by the prohibition of airsoft guns. So I'm going to come back to this assertion in a moment. The second instance was a little bit less direct, and it came in the form of a press release by an organization called the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, the CACP. And the CACP in their press release again called for the prohibition of realistic replicas in Canada. And they made a statement that we particularly disagree with. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but what they said was that the people who are advocating for the continued use of these realistic-looking airsoft guns in the sport don't know what it's like to be in a dangerous situation with someone who has potentially a replica or potentially a real gun. And so what they're doing is they're making an appeal to authority. And an appeal to authority is a form of logical fallacy. And the way it works is you say, I'm an authority on this topic, so therefore my position is correct. And you are not an authority, so your position is incorrect. And it's a logical fallacy because whether a position is correct or not is based on its merits itself, not whether the person asserting it is an expert or not. Right? Certainly expertise helps in formulating a correct position, but it doesn't mean that the position is correct in and of itself. And so in this case, there's a bit more of a problem. The airsoft community, I guess unbeknownst to the CACP, contains a whole lot of people who are current and former police officers. In addition to that, there are a large number of current and former members of the Canadian Armed Forces, many of whom are combat veterans who play airsoft. So when the CACP says that the people advocating for the continued use of these guns don't know what they're talking about, the people, or at least some of the people who are advocating for it, are the people that the CACP, I believe, are supposed to be speaking for. So that is a bit of a problem. I think it's fair to say it kind of invalidates the particular assertion they were making, and it illuminates a problem that we're encountering where a lot of the proponents of C-21 are not well informed about airsoft in the community. To go back to Bill Blair's assertion and his use of suicide by cop as a reason to prohibit airsoft guns, we did talk about sort of what happens there. And so from talking to officers in the community about the situation, what I'm told is that, people use a variety of objects to commit suicide by cop. They can use replica guns. They can use real guns. But really they can use anything that in the heat of the moment under stress that would look, or a police officer would perceive as a firearm. That'll work, right? And I'm told that very commonly what they use is knives. So, as you're already, I'm sure, thinking, removing airsoft guns from that equation isn't going to prevent suicide from cop. It's not going to stop that from happening. And the reason it's not going to stop it from happening is because the airsoft gun, the object, isn't the cause of the situation. The cause of the situation is that the person who's decided to end their own life is experiencing a mental health crisis. And so the potential solution to that would be to make sure that Canadians have more and better access to mental health care, and that Canadians are better educated about what it looks like when someone is kind of working their way towards this kind of crisis, and how to get them the help they need to prevent them from ending up in this kind of tragic situation. So, if that was actually Bill Blair's concern, like if he was trying to prevent suicide by cop, that's what he'd be doing. That's what he'd be addressing. And the fact that he's talking about airsoft guns kind of gives you a hint that that's not what his objective really is here. What this is really about, the reason he's using this example, is because when they released Bill C-21, when they introduced it, the bill, it's not well crafted. We've talked about a lot of the problems with it before. It wasn't well researched. What we found out, as ASIC began to do work to deal with this, as the FSAQ did work to deal with this, as other organizations have kind of come on board to help us, what we've all encountered is the realization that the government didn't know anything about airsoft. I mean, they knew that the guns existed, but they didn't know about the community. They didn't realize that there were tens of thousands of Canadians who own and use these guns safely and responsibly in the sport. They didn't know that there are, at our current count, around 300 businesses, mostly small businesses in Canada, that cater to the sport. They didn't understand that industry in Canada is worth over $100 million, and it employs thousands of Canadians. So, they introduced the bill, and very quickly we all stood up and said, hey, we exist, and what you're doing is going to cause us a serious problem. It's going to destroy our community. And hey, you didn't consult with anybody in the community before you did this. And that is a serious problem for them, because it started to erode their political support for the bill. And when it was covered in the media, it made them kind of look like the bad guys, going after a group of Canadians who were just enjoying the sport and weren't causing a problem. And it made them look maybe a little bit less than competent. So they're eager to find these kind of quick, easy solutions to it. And one of them is to talk about suicide by cop and to suggest that this bill will prevent that, which is, we've just gone over, it won't. Another talking point that they're bringing forward, and that came forward pretty quickly, was, well, we're not trying to ban airsoft. If the guns have orange tips, that'll be okay. We've talked about orange tips before, and I'm going to go over how that applies here. The key problem, or one of the key problems in this case with orange tips, is that there's nothing preventing a criminal from painting the tip of a gun orange. In fact, in talking to people in the industry in the U.S., where orange tips are required and where some states require guns to have different sections of the gun brightly colored, what's happened is criminals have painted the guns to match that, in the hopes that if they get into a violent altercation with the police will hesitate for a moment because they won't be sure if what they're looking at is a real gun or not. So in suggesting orange tips, it actually potentially makes police officers' job more dangerous. It maybe puts them in more danger if they encounter this. And in fact, the police here, and again, in talking to the police in the community, they're aware that criminals and that people brightly color guns, real guns. And as a result of that, when they encounter anything that looks like a firearm, during a call, they have to proceed as if it is a real firearm until they can determine for sure that it's not, right? So the orange tip, it's not going to solve the situation. It won't prevent suicide by cop. Those are the talking points they're using, and that's why they aren't correct, right? Why they aren't a solution. And it's why they're using them, and we've covered kind of, how you counter them. You talk about what, that all kinds of items can be used by people to commit suicide by cop, that the underlying cause is that someone's in a mental health crisis, and the solution to that would be better access to mental health care, among others. You can talk about why orange tips actually make things more dangerous and don't do anything to prevent this kind of situation. As always, when you talk to people about this, remember the 3 R's. Be reasonable, be rational, be relatable. I hope this was useful. I really appreciate you watching. There's more videos coming. Thanks for watching.